Hi, and welcome to the Soul and Survival podcast with Grant and Louise Bentley. We have run the Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy since 1995. We are both qualified practicing homeopaths, and Grant is also a naturopath. Together, we discovered a link between energy and facial structure based on traditional ideas from homeopathy that have roots going back 200 years. This project is called Homeopathic Facial Analysis, or HFA for short, and has been the cornerstone of clinical diagnosis and training courses since 1999. Between us, we have written and produced 7 HFA books, including Soul and Survival. Soul and Survival is the philosophy of energy influencing matter and how this energy forms individual facial structure, our unconscious drives and fears, our life patterns, and universal time cycles. Okay, well, apparently I'm leading in this week, so welcome, Grant.
Welcome.
To this next Soul and Survival episode. We ended up the last episode, I was just reflecting, you wanted to talk about the misappropriation of energy, and that's a great topic. Let's go there, but can I please go to something else first? Because I find it so fascinating. When you wrote Soul and Survival, I had the fortune at the time to be your editor. I'm not the only editor. You had another editor as well, but I was a sort of a grammar editor. And you would write these passages, these chapters, and then I had heard parts of them, but not all of them, and then I would read them, and I was really blown away by some of them. I mean, extraordinary insight. And you wrote a large chapter on each of the 7 miasms. So we've got the primary of yellow and then red and then blue, which is outward, circular and inward motion. And then the 3 duos, the orange, which is the outward and the circular, and the purple, which is the circular and the inward. And then the green, which is our tubercular, which is outward and inward. And then, of course, brown, the 7th miasm. And the disease that was associated with brown is cancer, something that's very feared in our time. But you wrote this, at the beginning of each chapter, you wrote the sort of the aspects, or perhaps I think I might have pulled them out, but for brown there's about 30 I can see here. And what I wanted to explain to people is that, you know, if you're not familiar with all of this work, that Grant's got a hypothesis that every 150 years we go through, the planet, goes through this universal cycle, which is one of those 7 miasms. We are currently in the brown time, 1950 to 2100. And you've written about the history and each miasm. So what I wanted you to comment on is the fact that we're all living in a brown time now. We're nearly 75 years in, which is the halfway mark, which is kind of interesting in itself. And there's all these 30 different aspects that I have in front of me on page, 349. And I wanted to just pull up a few and have you give your thoughts about them, given that you wrote this all those years ago. And it's well over 20 years since you wrote this, I think, or about 20 years. And I just see it every day. And I'm just fascinated that you were able to take this from the homeopathic clinic and the facial structure. So
I think you need to explain before we go into that, though, what you mean by outward motion, circular motion and so on, because people won't know.
Well, that's the core of the HFA processes, that there's 3 motions in the universe. It gives us our 3-dimensional universe. Outward
material universe.
Yeah, our material universe. Outward energy was sort of the easy one because it was sulfur, pushing everything to the surface. This idea of pushing out is what Sora or yellow is all about. I'll jump to the inward motion, the 3rd one, which is the syphilitic motion or miasm. And everyone kind of learned in homeopathy that's all going inward, you know, and it was meant to be worse than outward, but actually in reality they're just different manifestations. They both can be just as awful or as good as one another. And then the one in the middle took quite a while to work that out, the circular motion of red or psychosis. And they're completely different motions, but the 3 of them make up our 3-dimensional universe. And when it comes to the brown miasm, the 7th miasm, brown has the 3 energies all in equal proportion. Neither is dominant to the other. And so the core word is unity. But they're, look, I'll pick the first word from your list of 30, and it's the word vulnerable. So when you think about choosing that word vulnerable and the Brown Miasm, and at the time that we live in, because we're living in a brown time, whether you're a brown dominant person or not, we're all influenced by this energy at this point in history. What are your thoughts on unity and vulnerability?
It's the foundation stone of what Brown is all about. So these things, just in a really quick nutshell, this is one of the things that made me understand that we're not talking about miasm as in a disease that it infects our DNA to make us worse every generation, but it is in fact a survival instinct that is there to help us cope and try and restore balance and order. And what we call a miasm is essentially the direction that survival instinct takes to defend itself. So when you talk about that outward motion, for example, the reason that we have that is because that people who are strong in that outward motion will protect their vital inner core by throwing any infection as far out to the periphery as they possibly can, and therefore it protects the inner core. And each one of these colour groups, or because we've moved away from the word miasm now, each one of these colour groups is a different action of motion, but that's its design. Its design is to protect the human being, not to try and kill it. That makes no sense. Even when you talk about the syphilitic or inward motion and how, it's always regarded as, traditionally as being the worst of the worst, and and I think some people do it, not even the fact that, you have that one miasm, but now they talk about it in, this is the stage of the pathology that you're in when everything starts to break down.
Which you don't follow
at
all.
No, I don't follow that at all. In fact, all right, so what is so good about inward motion? Well, ask a hibernating bear or ask a deciduous tree. This withdrawal and conservation of energy to withstand stress is a really important part of survival. And so what the whole HFA process is about is making sure that we get a remedy that fits the survival instinct of the patient that's in front of us, so we give them the same set of instructions to help them along. Right?
Because it's already their survival instinct.
Because it's already their
instruction program. So if you're a brown person, dominant brown, that will mean your facial structure has about 1/3 of the yellow outward motion features, 1/3 of the circular red group features, and 1/3 inward motion, syphilitic inward features. And, we work that out. We chart the face, we look at every feature and we allocate those points and we go, oh, it's pretty equal, therefore they are in the brown group.
Yep.
So vulnerability, whether it's an individual or the time we're in, what's your comment on that?
Okay, so, and I am going to get to it, even though you keep, you're looking at me as sort of hurry the hell up.
No, that's okay. I know your style.
No, well, because if we go back, so we've got to know how it influences, okay? Because to understand the philosophy of something is just, it's vitally important. Too many people go immediately to the how-to rather than the why when it comes to subjects. So when you're dealing with, say, outward motion, we'll stick with that because that's just easy to understand. So it pushes infection to the periphery. But remember that your survival instincts are programmed whenever you're energetically or biologically out of homeostasis, then it comes into play. Energetically means that it'll do the same thing with thoughts and emotions. It'll push it to the surface. So your behaviour under stress is quite predictable if you're yellow, if you're red, if you're whatever. So that what that also means is that the dangers or the types of stresses or the types of things that are going to trigger you and put you out of homeostatic range are also similar. And that's why that's again a common human experience that a lot of yellows really experience or look at life in roughly the same sort of way, because it's almost as if we're born into this life with yellow glasses on or red tinted glasses or blue tinted glasses, and so we're still seeing and living and tasting the same world as each other, but we're perceiving it with a slightly yellow, red, or in this case, brown tinge. Right? That's what I mean. And that's why we perceive it, because our survival instinct is like... So our survival instinct colour group and the way that it defends itself and the things that it's going to regard as the most dangerous triggers influence the type of personality that we have and how we find our happiness and what dangers we want to avoid. Now, it's easy when you're talking about... Now, all of these things are in a confined space, the human cell, okay? So if you're...
When you say the human cell, do you mean the whole human body?
The whole human body. The whole human is dominant. Hahnemann said that when it comes to the world of energy, and he was talking about miasms here in a traditional way, but I want you to apply it to the energetic world, that when two differing energies, differing means that the difference between outward motion and inward motion, for example. That's a real point of obvious difference. So when two different energies come together into a confined space, the human body, one of them will dominate the other. Now, if your facial features are miles down the yellow track by comparison to the blue track, then I know yellow is dominant to the blue, because whatever survival instinct is the dominant power is going to form every aspect of your body as well as your face. And then so the whole facial structure tells me how dominant any one of these primary energies are in your body. Right? And if one is miles ahead, then I know that, and we'll say in this case yellow, then I know that that person needs a yellow remedy. They need outward energy. And they're going to see all of life through this yellow tinge, particularly when they're under stress. When they're not under stress and consciousness takes over, or that soul part, then that can be completely different scenario. But when you're under the grip of the survival instincts influence, now you've got a commonality because it's a program.
Yeah.
Right. So two different energies, if they're in a confined space like the human body, the stronger will overpower the weaker. Mm-hmm. The other thing, though, that he said, that if the energies are of equal strength, then they combine to create a combination or hydra-headed miasm, is what he said. So the bottom line to that is that if you've got an equal inner and outer energy of equal strength, then one can't overpower the other. So they're both existing in the same space. And that existence creates a completely different outlook. Now, this is partly why we chose colours, because colours are great at that.
And they come from the three primaries.
They come from the three primaries.
You know, we know that, say, if you're talking about green, blue and yellow, the two primaries,
inner or outer energy,
mixed together in equal proportions, create green.
Yeah.
And green, people used to say, oh, so I'm a bit yellow and a bit blue. And it's tempting to go down that avenue, a little bit like I'm a bit like my mother and I'm a bit like my father. But essentially, you're a whole new you. And green is a whole new colour and energy force as opposed to yellow or blue.
Well, if I painted this room green and you walked in and you liked the shade of green, it's a beautiful sort of classy old world sage green, right? You don't walk into a room and say, what a lovely yellow-blue combination. You immediately, green is green is green. Right? You don't think of it as yellow and blue, and that's why we chose the colours. I remember when we did this and we went down this pathway. I think we were on holiday down at Phillip Island or something like that. One of those years.
No, that was
years
actually
ago.
when the triangle was formed. I
Was
remember
it?
that.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
No, this was another time when we were talking about how difficult it was to describe, innocent little children with horrible pathological names, and we started to code with colour, and then it became just so obvious that it was a good thing to do, and off it took very quickly, as all good and true things do tend to take off quite quickly, don't they?
They do. So we've got to... Anyway, the bottom line is not how faulty my memory is, but really get this concept of the two opposite energies living in the same place, and the fact that once you're, and we'll stick with green, once you're green, green is green. It's not a combination of yellow and blue, even though they're the two primaries that put you to that state. It's green, and it's only green. Right?
And brown is only brown. And brown is the only one of the 7 miasms that has 3 components.
That's right.
Which makes it particularly interesting because it's got equal outward, circular and inward. And
now, an
unity,
upset to any one of those primaries, which is really easily done, because if you throw one ball in the air and catch it, it's no big deal. You can throw 2 balls in the air and it's getting a little more difficult, but now you add your third, and now you've got to be a serious juggler to be able to do this sort of thing.
Hence the vulnerable, perhaps?
Hence the vulnerable. Because at any stage, if the weakest link breaks, you're no longer brown. Right? All brown falls to bits. It all starts to disintegrate.
So what does that make you think of in our modern times,
well,
our current concrete jungle?
Oh, there are so many examples of this, but it's not a coincidence that we try and find the most downtrodden and bring them up. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, by the way. I'm just saying this is why we're doing it now.
Whereas possibly 150, 300, 400 years ago, that wasn't the focus.
No, you were left on your own.
Yeah.
You were completely left on your own.
But now it's like if you're the weakest link, you get the attention.
Yeah, you do, because that weakest link can bring the whole structure down. At least that's the... And you've got to understand, all these things are unconscious. All these actions and reactions and even what we think are beliefs, they're not. They're coming from unconscious. They're not constructs that you've come up with. They're coming from unconscious needs. And when I mean unconscious, and we spoke about this once before, is that it does get complicated, but I'll do my best, right? So the unconscious is what nature has given you into an area, I'll say your brain for the want of a better word, but the reality is we channel through our brain. We don't remember through our brain. We remember by... It's like, look, if we use the analogy of your computer and the cloud, the information is in a database outside of your computer. When you put on your smart TV and you go to YouTube and you watch whatever you want to watch, that's not inside your TV. right? It's in a database somewhere out in the ether. That starts getting beyond me. But what we do through the TV and then the app, we use both of those mechanisms to then stream what we want to watch. Now, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that all the information that we draw on is not so much in our brain, but we stream it from our brain.
Or through. Yeah.
So our brain is both the app and the TV, but it isn't where it's necessarily stored. And it's certainly not the people that we're now watching on YouTube.
It's so bizarre, isn't it?
It is bizarre.
Hard to get your head around. So
in this etheric field, right, that we call mind, let's call it mind rather than brain. The brain is the only organ that's able to stream the mind. Okay. So in the mind are all of it's the ability to be able to learn now. And then you've got the subconscious from a sort of, a psychological perspective of all the unneeded or repressed or whatever it might be. But all these memories that have been accumulated in this lifetime but are not necessarily needed or usable now, right? For either because they're just trite and trivial. We don't need to remember every license plate of every car that's gone past us. So that's useless information for everyday life. But if you're under hypnosis, you might be able to do it. So it's there, but we don't need to access it. Another thing is pain. Right? Some things are so darn painful that they will inhibit daily present life. So they're kind of suppressed or repressed memories. But then what I'm talking about is an unconscious. It's part of your instinct that we develop. Now that instinct, that survival instinct, falls into those 7 categories. Now, not only do human beings have their own survival instinct of yellow, red, whatever, but the earth does because it's a confined space. But the thing is with the earth is that it's not so compressed like an individual human being. So it goes through cycles rather than stays stagnant. So we have time cycles that run through. What homeopathy teaches you everything, right? So when you're in a brown time, all the fears, phobias, and so on, all those emotions get succussed onto this unconscious survival instinct, this etheric survival instinct. And then all brown people share that etheric mind.
Yeah, it's so wild, isn't
All right. Am I
No.
going too far?
I've had these conversations with you many times, but I love them, and that they are quite hard to wrap your head around. I mean, there are so many elements.
Well, this is also part of the common human experience, is because we share. I, as a green person, share the green unconscious with every other green person on the planet.
But you're also currently experiencing living in a brown time.
I am, so I can see its influence. But even now, I will judge it through green eyes.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Right, so a person who is brown might look at everything that's going on and go, well, I think that this is a great idea. Whereas someone who is green, red or otherwise might look at it and go, what on earth are you going on about? That makes no sense at all.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating. I've got to do a bit of maths and I'll think this through, but I'm thinking about the brown time because, as I mentioned before, 1950 to 2100. The last one was 900 AD to 1050, and the next one will be 2900. God, can you imagine, to 3050. But the one thing they all have in common, including the one prior, which ended at the 0 mark, where BC turned to AD, is that they all end on that 1,000. They have that 1,000-year cycle built in. So when you look back to 900 to 1050, 100 years into that 150-year cycle is 1000 AD. And this time around, between 1950 and 2100, 50 years in, we had 2000 AD. And next time, they're going to have 3000 AD. And I think you pointed out there's a commonality between 1000 AD and 2000 AD. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we might be able to guess. But what's the commonality between 1000 AD and 2000 AD?
Both times were convinced it was coming to an end.
Yeah, both times.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, oh my God,
reasons.
this is the world's coming to an end,
Yeah.
the world's coming to an end. The Y2K thing, which we were well into our adulthood when that occurred. And I remember everybody didn't really know, are the planes going to drop out of the sky? Did they program the computers properly? There was a real panic. And then, of course, everything just kept on going.
Yeah. Look, when you've got...
But they did that in 1000 AD, right?
Yeah.
What did they do? You know more about the history.
Well, a lot of people were convinced it was the end of time because of Christian revelation. That it was clearly going to be at 1000 AD was when Jesus was coming back and the material world was all going to collapse, and this is where either salvation or torment was about to take place. It didn't, but that sort of doomsday prepping was common then, and it's just as common now.
But not, say, like in 1850, there weren't hardly any doomsday preppers in 1850, and yet there's quite a lot now, and a lot of people talk a lot about the end of the world or what's coming,
Yeah.
And, so talk about that, and okay, you wrote, this was the third point you wrote on your Brown list, natural dangers, artificial solutions.
Okay, there's too many things coming at me here.
Sorry, I can't help it.
Okay. So, the first one is the balancing act that Brown has. The thing with that balancing act is that it creates a state of high anxiety. That anything could happen, because you're not just dealing with the weak spots of Brown, which you are, but you're dealing with also the weak spots of the potential triggers for red, for blue, and for yellow. So there's 4 different things that you got to worry about, whereas if you're yellow, you don't worry about all those. How am I going to sort this out? How do I harmonise this? How do I reach an equilibrium? And the idea that life and, the whole thing can come crashing down at any moment is deep in the unconscious. Now, the average Brown person is not going to sit down thinking about the juggling act that is their life, but what they will experience is a high anxiety.
And control.
But they won't know why.
Do you see
right?
that? The control?
Oh, because you have to control.
Yeah.
You have to control all the potential triggers. Right? You have to make sure that your internal environment is not vulnerable to the external environment. And so this can go from high anxiety to a controlling sort of personality that has absolutely everything in order, because, that chaos represents the potential calamity. Anything to do with death, for example, or destruction, is so frightening that it just has to be avoided at all costs. That includes, by the way, any sort of death, meaning the killing of animals for food. Right? This is another representation of that same darn engine room of Brown that just keeps... We project it in 1,000 different ways, but the engine room is the same. The philosophy behind it is the same. And we're not even conscious of the philosophy. This is a thing.
Do you think it helps? Do you think it helps to be conscious of the philosophy? Like I do. I find it really helpful. Helps me understand people individually. I love to work out a person's colour group. And then, there's a judgment in it, but there's also an acceptance. It's like, okay, you're yellow. It's how you behave when you're under stress. That makes sense to me. Or you're red, or you're purple, or you're brown, or whatever it might be. You're green, we've got them all in the family. We've been watching this for 25 years plus now, and friends and all that. And it's very... There's something accepting in understanding a person's got a different program to you.
I think that's good. You can do that when you're outside looking in, when you're the experiencer of it. I don't know whether that helps the feeling of that sort of anxiety or that sort of trepidation, just knowing where it might come from.
You don't think it helps you to understand yourself through your own colour group?
It helps you understand yourself,
I think it explains so many of those odd little quirks, and you go, that's why it's there. Okay.
Right.
That's to me, I get a lot out of it. I get a lot out of all of it. I've found it to be fascinating, and I'm naturally a person that's confused, and so I find clarity in the model, a lot of clarity. Yeah.
Well, yes, you're right in the sense that it's important to understand, because you see the motivations, or you can read the motivations of, I guess, social life. You can see the motivations of culture. There's this always backing the underdog. There's shunning of anything that resembles death or decay, which, like we said, even goes into diet, for goodness sake. And
everything,
and not doing the animals and trying to be as pristine as possible. You can take it to its absolute extreme, where there are now people that are saying we're bad for the planet, that we can destroy the entire planet, which is true in a way. If you let off all these nuclear bombs, I guess we can, but we're energetic. We'll just start again somewhere else and hopefully do it right next time. But that doesn't mean I think I want it to happen.
Definitely not.
All I'm saying is that they're all still manifestations of perfection, right? Everything has to be in balance and in harmony. But here's the thing: life isn't harmonious. It never was. When you look at it, you can see you're above the Amazon, or you're above the Daintree rainforest, or even our rainforest up here, and you can look down and you just think it's Eden and it's beautiful and it's all running itself, But when you come down to the micro, it's struggle. That
competition.
People up the road had all their chickens killed by a fox that got in. Didn't need to kill every one of them. It did kill every one of them, but didn't need to. Right? Is that equilibrium for the chicken? I don't think so. What about the little baby deers that are taken? Wedge-tailed eagles come down and take them.
Yeah.
It looks harmonious.
I don't know whether they take a baby deer, but they certainly take a rabbit or a chicken.
Yeah.
Will they take a baby deer?
I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Might be too heavy, but your point's still made.
The point is that it only looks harmonious if you're not living in the jungle.
If you're in the concrete jungle, you're not living in the green jungle.
No, so there's not even any idea of harmony.
Hence,
there.
artificial solutions, perhaps?
Artificial solutions are really big in Brown. And it really explains why drugs are such an important player in the social life and the health of, and I use that word health loosely.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can drug yourself into health.
Of course
You can drug yourself into pain relief, but you can't drug yourself into health. And so, but always trying to come up with some sort of human-made and I guess I see this also too with some of these ideologies where their starting point isn't practical. You know, some of you got to be really careful. So I'm not going to go down that avenue, because usually people who are trying to portray the ethic of kindness and love don't take opposing views in a kind or loving way.
No, there is a little bit of... There's hypocrisy in every coloured group. You'll see that. The more you study them and the more you study people that belong to that colour group, you'll see the hypocrisy there. It's quite interesting, and how we don't see our own hypocrisy all that easily. But yeah, brown's an extraordinary colour. It's both amazing, because some of the things you've written in here are like, nurture, unity and perfection, replication, rebuilding, problem solving. You know, there's abundance. I mean, we've never lived in a more abundant time, have we? Not everybody on the planet, but more people than ever before have been lifted out of poverty. That's an extraordinary thing. I mean, we're in our 7th decade, can you believe it? That sounds pretty old, doesn't it? But we've seen, even from when we were children and we were born into middle class, reasonably well-to-do families, but what was considered enough back in the 1960s is not the same as now.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can't possibly put up an argument where you think that our kids that are now having their own kids, but you cannot argue that they are richer by comparison to our grandparents, their great-grandparents. Right?
Oh, absolutely. And we're richer than ours.
They were richer than us at the same age. When you compare, I know that, they all kind of bitch and moan, and they all think boomers are responsible for every evil on the planet. But everyone needs an enemy, right? That's just the way it goes. And to a lot of people, boomers are just the enemy. They forget that they're going to inherit all of this enemy, by the way. But at the same time, if I put myself in the same age bracket and what I had by comparison to what our kids have, they're richer than what we were.
Absolutely. They might owe a lot, but they've still got it to play with. Some other things that are interesting in this list is nature. You talked about the soil, the cycles of life. You talked about both the fear of nature and the embracing of nature.
I'd need more clarification.
Well, I mean, you can see that there's a huge fear of nature at the moment, like this absolute fear about the weather.
There's a misunderstanding of it for a start.
And yet people embrace nature. I think, the world's greener than it was. I mean, it got pretty stripped raw in the green time. They chopped more trees down than you could shake a stick at, literally. Yeah. And a lot of those trees have been replanted, and there's a real effort to bring nature back, and that's a great, great thing. But there's also a real fear of nature.
Well, you're absolutely right. Or there's either a fear of nature itself or a fear of what we might do to it and then what it might do to us in retaliation.
And it can be pretty fierce at times. Yeah, fires and hurricanes and floods are real things.
Yes, they are real. They are real. But when you're talking about, gee whiz, when you're talking about climate... let's just say one has to be extraordinarily careful.
Well, follow the science.
Because there's a lot of censorship of opinion. Now that censorship is really important too. Mainly because if there's going to be unity, there has to be unity of belief, and there has to be unity of opinion. Yeah, and it's not a surprise that censorship comes in with any opposing view.
Absolutely, right? Yeah.
But there are opposing views, I mean, one of the great things about the modern world is the access to the internet and access to people who are really in the know, rather than like when it comes to climate, for example. You don't have to take, I'm not going to say my own stand necessarily, but I am going to say you don't have to take what the weather person on Channel 7 tells you is happening to the climate. You can go and look up meteorologists and astrophysicists, and they can tell you their opinion, and their opinion is right out there and often very different to what we're getting in mainstream. Now that depends now, and this is one of the big problems of modern life, isn't it, is that you almost get to choose what you believe. Do you choose to believe the brown calamity, because it's really easy to do, because the pervading energetic, the energy that's being emitted is one of neurosis and potential calamity. So it's really easy for us in this time to go down that pathway.
And also there's a real focus on rebuilding. And remember, to rebuild, you have to break down first, don't you? I mean, you don't need to rebuild something that isn't broken. There's a real focus on breaking things and rebuilding them. Well, this is the craftsman.
Yeah, we categorised it. We put in these symbolic representations, human representations. So what we're trying to do is I'm trying to anthropomorphise
which you should never do in clinical prescribing, by the way. It's only good for philosophy.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to anthropomorphise an era, an epoch, a time frame. And I'm just trying to do that for convenience sake. Some people have taken it really literally. I don't mean it to be really literal. But it's the anthropomorphized version of that helps you understand the current brown situation that we find ourselves in is the craftsman. And what the craftsman does is this, that they refine and refine and refine, even when it's not needed.
Like getting another change to your computer system or your phone, another upgrade, another change. It's kind of like, do we really need this many changes?
You don't. The clock still ticks and the cuckoo bird comes out. It's not like it's broken, but the craftsman's going to refine that, make it even better, make another one.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just what they do, even at the moment where, you know, we're getting solar panels and wind turbines and all this. We're going through the motions of rebuilding a whole infrastructure of energy. Now, there are a lot of people, credible people, that say the old one actually wasn't that broke. So why do we need this? Now, I'm not in a place to be able to say whether those other people are right or wrong. But at the same time, I can see the energy reproducing itself. We can't, that when you're in a time frame, that the time frame is like a wave on the ocean. And I'll just go back to a surfing analogy because I like surfing. And when that wave has got you, when you're up, it lifts you. There's nothing you can do now. You got to go with it, right? I mean, you can jump off really if you want to. I mean, but, you know, you sit down there, you see it coming, particularly one that's bigger than you originally thought, and you think, well, here we go. And the real here we go starts because you start paddling and then suddenly you start moving really quickly and then you feel it lift you up. And now you got to ride it, right? Because if you fall, you could be in trouble because you're just going to tumble and bumble and stumble and fumble, right? So it lifts you up and now you got to ride it. And any time era it's sending out constant waves all the time that we have to ride, right? And one of the waves is to overdo And also one of the waves is to tear down the old and make something new.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether the old was broken or not. It's just the nature of the craftsman. Without the craft, if they didn't do it, they wouldn't have anything to do. Right? So
It's really
they
fascinating,
find problems everywhere. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
now
yeah.
they're looking
And
for
you've
problems.
written in your list, problem solving. Yeah, it's a very big deal.
And it's not just problem solving, it's problem creating. You're finding
then
the
you've
problem
got something
to solve.
haven't you? You know, that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let me just remind those who haven't got Soul and Survival or haven't read it, and I really recommend it. It's a pretty nice read, I have to say, Grant. Yellow is, you gave it the trader. You gave red the farmer, blue the shepherd, orange the warrior, purple the priest, green the hunter, and brown the craftsman, or should I say craftsperson, because, of course, in no other time could you get such focus on the differentiation of male, female, or genders. All of this is very brown, this idea of we're so alike. Our unity is so strong that Brown doesn't even like to differentiate, which can be quite difficult because we are diverse. And the other thing about it is that it's the representation of the disease cancer. I mean, cancer is when cells proliferate in abundance in the body and they're non-differentiated, you know. This is where the disease model of each of the 7 actually also still describes the nature of the time.
Yeah, and also too, it's the time of abundance, like what we talk about with Brown, and that abundance, particularly when it comes to food, and this is where it all ties in, links you to Donald Forbuster when he wrote his book about carcinosin as a remedy, and he speaks about how the diathesis of cancer includes diabetes. And diabetes, of course, is a staggering problem in modern day life. And it's only a problem in modern day life. I mean, not to say people didn't have diabetes back then, but it's reached these, quote unquote epidemic proportions.
It's not an epidemic because you don't catch it.
Well, it's epidemic proportions in the sense that it's
the sheer abundance
like
of
I said, it's hitting staggering numbers, and the cost must be immense. And most of it's preventable.
Well,
right?
It's too much sugar, right?
It's too much sugar, essentially.
The abundance of sugar. We have had an amazing abundance of food, particularly in the first world. And it doesn't mean everybody gets to eat all the time, but a lot more people are eating more than they ever have before. And there's a lot more obesity,
look, I
etc.
know people will jump up, and some people, and they've already done it. They've already done it clinically, sort of saying that it's more multifactorial than that. And, you just say it's overeating. And I don't say it's overeating, but it's overeating the wrong things, because I'll tell you what, if I can ever be shown somebody on a diet of steak and cheese who ends up diabetic, I'll go, hey.
Yeah, well, that's independent science, and it's all out there, but it's not necessarily in sync with the ethic, shall we say, which it's an interesting ethic because there's an artificiality to Brown.
Well, it is, and that's what essentially we were talking about when we're talking about the artificial solutions to natural problems. Now, it's not just the solutions; it's artificial starting points, philosophical starting points. One of the great examples of this is in, and I'll move away from climate and stuff. It's very up in the air. Pardon the pun, but if you want to dig into that, that's a pretty darn controversial statement and or subject, I should say. And a lot of people are sort of saying that it's done and dusted. The UN are on it, the IPCC. There's a lot. That's a long way from consensus from people in the know. That's for sure.
So, what other topic do you want to add in?
But the topic that I want, that's probably closer to home, that's better that I stick with, is say, diet, for example. Now, in modern times where we hear a lot about veganism, we hear a lot about making meat unavailable to people, even to the point where we shouldn't be, now it's, cows are responsible for the methane in the atmosphere, and that we should be, we shouldn't be breeding cows. And all I'm going to say, because it's such a complex topic and I'm not an expert, but the starting point's wrong. The starting point that we shouldn't be eating animals is just wrong, right? So you're starting from an ideological, or in soul and survival writing, artificial origins, and you're expecting to come to a natural place. Well, you can't. You can't start with the artificial or a construct of Eden and then apply it to the natural world and think it's going to work. If you deny human beings meat and animal products, you're just a psychopath.
Oh, that's heavy going.
No, you are.
No,
you are.
well,
because you... No.
How much history have we got here? Hundreds of thousands of years?
Let me finish. You're a psychopath. Because if you follow the nutrition of meat and animal products, it is so important to the development of the human being, not just culturally, but individually, and yes, even in today's day and age. And if you use meat and animal products as a medicine for diabetes, as many functional medicine doctors do, as well as naturopaths, and I put people on it if they're open to it. I don't push, but if they're slightest bit of, if that door's just ajar, I'm going to push it, because even in my own personal experience, it has been immensely beneficial, as you would know.
Yeah.
It's been incredible. And the reality is that I can point to any part of your or my body and I can show you where the fat and the protein is. You point to an area of my body that's carbohydrate. Right? I mean, so if we are denying... And this is
we are, essentially.
This is why I'm saying they're psychopathic. Is because you're hurting people, mate. You're hurting people's health. You're limiting not only their lifespan, but you're dramatically limiting their quality of life.
Yep.
And if you're going to do that deliberately to another person, okay, well then you define psychopathic for me.
No, you're right. You're right. And another interesting thing in your list is energy exhaustion, and I don't think you can see clearly when you're exhausted. That's the whole thing. Your survival instinct's in charge. It doesn't see clearly. You're exhausted, and we know that too much sugar equals exhaustion. Abundance can be exhausting, and there's a real energy problem in this time, correct?
It is, but it's more than just the sugar. There will be... and then we better finish on this, because
sure.
we might be doing... I might be overdoing it, but
that's okay.
It's more than just that. The sugar is part of the cycle. The basis of trying to... in the unconscious of Brown is the absolute knowledge that things can go wrong at any time. So they have this belief, that's this feeling, they don't know where it's coming from, that something bad could happen, right? So many of these people that whenever anything good happens, they wait for the bad to happen as the compensation for the good, or they wait for it to all fall apart because nothing goes. They feel vulnerable, they feel unprotected, they feel as if destruction could come at any time, even though they may not. Do you understand what I mean by it's a sensation? They're not working it out consciously. So
Just a feeling.
It's a feeling of dread, right? A feeling of anticipatory anxiety regarding the future.
Yeah.
right? So because it can all break down. So from that breakdown, or this constant state of internalized anxiety, you have a secondment of energy towards that anxiety, leaving the body in this state of energetic bereft, and then to try and top up that energy loss is a constant desire for sugar. And around and around and around the merry-go-round we go.
Short-term solutions, long-term problems. Yeah. And we see that all the time. And it's really difficult in your life to take on a short-term difficulty to get a long-term outcome, such as, really getting into the exercise or eating really well and really doing the responsible thing, being a good parent, putting some discipline in place. It can be really hard in the short term, but it will pay off in the long. And you see this vulnerability and going for easy options. And drugs are often an easy option for chronic illness. And they're very comfortable. They can feel amazing in the short term, but there will be consequences.
And particularly when they give you a bit of relief from this incessant dread.
Yeah, which is really tricky. So if you're a brown person and you come through the clinic and you get a brown remedy and you get that increase in energy, you're going to feel stronger for dealing with the issues you have to deal with. And the rest of us, if we understand our time, the ethic that's driving it, we can feel a little more comfortable with it, because sometimes for those of us who aren't brown, which is you and me and 6/7 of the population, some of the ways that are chosen can be quite foreign to us. We don't understand them particularly well.
At an individual level too, if there's someone there that just says, oh, that's me, that's me, that's me, and the more you equate to it, the more in survival mode you must be.
Yeah, sure.
Right, because this, again, we have to go back to this seesawing. This is where the and is, the pivot, right? So the more you equate to this, the more in a stress state that you are. And so what you should be doing for yourself, if you're getting this checklist off this, just going, oh, I've got that, I've got that, I've got that, and you're living your life like this, then you need to do something about it. You need to understand the triggers, because you shouldn't be living your life like this. The survival instinct is giving you this sense of dread over something so you'll stay away from it. Not so you'll live in it, but so you'll move away from it. And so it is about trying to find out those things that are draining you, and homeopathy can help replenish, because there was a repulsion model and a replenishment model, and maybe, we should go into that at some stage. But homeopathy can help you replenish that energy, but it's still up to you to make the decisions that are going, because you just don't want to take the energy of the remedy and start putting it into some more anxious sort of pursuit.
Fortunately, the remedy doesn't do that.
It generally doesn't, no. And that's a good point, because now when you take the remedy, you're tipping that balance again. And that consciousness sort of says, oh, I don't want to really live like that. I'm sick of being a prepper. I'm sick of dreading life. I'm sick of always looking at the negative and what might happen. I'm sick of controlling. I'm sick of overdoing everything. Even when I go to exercise, I end up, running a marathon and overdoing it. Now my body's breaking. I'm sick of doing that too. It is about balance. And if you're ticking too many of the negative lists, then you do need to do something about it. Symptoms are there as a warning sign. They're meant to be a red light, not a green light to continue.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right, let's finish.
Can I just say thank you, because you said, oh, I can't really do this. I haven't read it for ages. But you know all this. You know it all backwards. And that's only just a portion of it. You just did a really great coverage of Brown. So thank you.
All right. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay, everybody. Hopefully I haven't depressed you too much. And keep eating your meat. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks for listening to Soul and Survival. If you are interested in more information, books, courses, consultations, learning more about facial analysis or life themes, please visit our college site, Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy, vcch.org.